Teac W1200. Is it the best cassette player today? What's the difference between it and the Tascam 202 MKVII, if there is a difference? What can you do with this USB port? Does the Teac W1200 accept all types of cassette tapes? What about Dolby-B-type noise reduction? Is it a 3-head DAC or a 2-head DAC? And the most crucial question, how does it compare with cassette players from the 80s and the 90s? Hi, I am Emenery, an engineer and an audiophile. As I prepared to record this video, I realized that my concept of the word need to be changed or corrected. According to the dictionary, an audiophile is a person who is very interested and enthusiastic about equipment for reproducing recorded sound and the quality of that sound. But I think that description needs to be more accurate, because for me, and perhaps for you, an audiophile is someone who is very interested in and enthusiastic about the sound experience obtained with equipment for reproducing recorded sound and the quality of that sound experience, not the equipment itself. Because most YouTubers who speak to an audiophile audience are collectors more than actual audiophiles. So take care of it. I'm not a collector, I sell my used gear all the time, and I recommend you to do the same. An audiophile doesn't have to worry about whether the DAC has 21, 22 or even 23.5 bits of precision, but the engineer who developed or analyzed the product, yes, he needs to, or she needs to. Audiophiles must worry about the sound experience, whether it delights their ears somehow or not, and find a way to explain that experience in words that make sense, not use words related to food, crunchy, salty, sweet, I don't know, regardless of whether the equipment has 32-bit resolution audio or less than 10 bits, like this cassette player, which has a headphone close to 10-bit resolution. In fact, it has a signal ratio of 59 dB, which means less than 10-bit resolution in digital domain. Okay, that was Emenery, the engineer, talking. Now, the audiophile Emenery. However, listening to 10-bit digital audio is completely different from listening to music with the Teac W1200. And just for the record, Files K11R2R, which has a video on the channel, is here because the recording tests used in this video were made using it. In addition to the DAC, I also needed a preamplifier so that the analog sound had the highest possible volume at input without distortions when the signal was amplified. And in this case, I used the preamplifier in the RCA 3 Pro from G Labs, which also has a video on the channel. Check it after this video. With this combination of equipment, I was able to get the highest possible recording volume on the tape with the least noise signal possible. Okay, and now the engineer is back to discuss the difference between the Teac W1200 and the Tascam 202 MKVII. Both brands belong to the same group, with Teac being the original Japanese brand and Tascam being Teac's North American subsidiary. Tascam tends to make products more aimed at the professional audio market, while Teac is more aimed at the general consumer public. That's why the Tascam 202 MKVII comes with these tabs to be easily attached to racks or tables commonly found in professional music studios. Since the Teac W1200 doesn't come with this, it is a little more compact and lighter. There is more than 2 pounds or more than a kilograms difference in weight. I'm not sure if this is due to the structure or if there are different components inside both. Another noticeable difference is that the Tascam 200 to MK7 has a switch called Play Mode, which has 2 options, normal or special. When you select the special option on the Tascam 200 to MK7, the sound from the DAC 1 goes to the ear line out, and the sound from DAC 2 goes to the headphone output, which gives you more independence between the DACs. On the Teac W1200 and the normal option on the 200 to MK7, there is no such independence of outputs. Here, DAC 1 will always have priority over the DAC 2 and will always send the same sound to the line out and the headphones output. There is another difference regarding the box's contents. The Tascam 200 to MK7 doesn't seem to come with RCA cables. The Teac does, but it comes with very simple RCA cables. I prefer to use cables with better shielding and better conductors as well. There's a link in the description to good RCA cables like this one. Okay, and inside the box there isn't an USB cable. But spoiler, you won't even need it. When you connect the Teac W1200 via the USB port to your PC or Mac, there will be generic audio drivers, both for sending and receiving audio in stereo up to 48 kHz with 16-bit resolution, which will be auto-installed generically on your computer. You think, okay, so I can both send music to tape and record audio from the tape using some DAW-type software, okay? Is it? No, not quite. And that makes the experience of using the USB connection frustrating, because both the Teac 1200 and the Tascam 200 to MK7 only allow you to receive audio played from the cassette tape to the computer. You will still need a recording software such as Audacity for that. The opposite, playing music on the computer and recording to the tape using the USB port is impossible. From my audiophile point of view, that would be much more important. Now from an engineer point of view, the Texas Instruments PCM2900C chip inside the Teac W1200 for USB communication has an integrated analog to digital converter and a digital to analog converter. They have both. Would it make it that much more expensive to add a few more analog components to do both functions? Or are these components on the board just not enabled because the signal quality is so bad and Teac doesn't want people to have that bad experience? I don't know. Okay, but let's say you want to convert your 90s mixtapes into digital files. Would this USB port be suitable for that? No. And it's not a question of bit resolution, because with 16 bits at 48 kHz, we have much more resolution than we need. In this case, the problem is that the USB circuit adds analog noise to the signal coming from the cassette. I recorded the same content from the tape in 2 ways, via USB port and via line-out converted by a Tascam Portacapture X6 recorder. And you can see the version recorded via USB has a constant noise at a frequency of 6 kHz. If the resolution is 16 bits, no matter how weak the signal is, our ears will certainly hear it at a certain volume gain. So forget that this device has a USB port. You don't want to add USB port noise to the sound of a cassette tape that already has plenty of noise. Let's talk about the features that really matter. Let's start with the analog inputs and outputs. On the back, it has the traditional stereo line in for connecting to devices that will send analog audio, like a DAC, for example, and the line out connection related to devices that will play the sound from the tape or recorded the sound. In my case, I have amplified speakers, cheap speakers. Still talking about analog connections, the front has a mono input for a microphone, a dynamic microphone, which will be recorded equally duplicated on the left and the right tracks on the tape. Obviously, the gain will not be enough to amplify the sound of a Shure SM7B microphone. To connect a microphone like this, you will need to add an external preamplifier. In fact, I would add an external preamp to connect any microphone because you don't want to record noise distortion from the internal microphone preamp on your tape. And if you want to use two microphones and record each one on a different channel of the tape, you will need two external preamps or a two-channel preamp and connect its outputs to the W1200's line in. Regarding the headphone output, here at the front we obviously have two channels, left and right, with volume control, but this headphone output has low power, only 15 milliwatts per channel with an impedance of 32 ohms. Yes, it's very weak. It's pretty weak, this output. So don't even think about using Sennheiser's HD 650 headphones, which I have already discussed on the channel. There's a video about this headphone. They have a very high impedance and will certainly distort the signal coming out of this output. In that case, you would have to an external headphone amplifier like the RCA 3 Pro and connect it via line out output to use the HD 650 to monitor the sound. Speaking of sounding monitoring, this cassette player has only two heads on both decks. What does that mean? This means that each one has a magnetic head that erases the tape's content and another head that either records or plays the recorded content. The best cassette players of the past always had three magnetic heads arranged in the following order of action: erase, record, and play. And because the heads were spaced apart, you could hear the sound recorded on the tape simultaneously while the content was being recorded. You could hear the sound recorded on the tape simultaneously while the content was being recorded. But that's not a feature of the Teac W1200. With only two heads, it's impossible to monitor the sound being recorded at the time of recording. Only the sound coming in through the recorder's line-in port can be monitored on the W1200. So, the question: are the cassette decks of the past better than this one? In a nutshell, yes. And now I am going to use a lot of words to explain why. There will never again be a Nakamichi, Dragon, a Revox B215, or even a Sony TC KA7ES. Many people consider these to be the three best cassette players ever. I've never owned any of them or even had the chance to hear how they sound like. For a long time, I had a Sony TC K650ES, a 3-head cassette player from the 90s. It isn't even as highly rated as the three I mentioned before. Still, I assure you that a TC K650ES with up-to-date maintenance will be superior to the Teac W1200 in every aspect. Perhaps any cassette player from the 90s with up-to-date maintenance will be superior to the Teac W1200 in every aspect, especially those with three heads. With three heads, the experience of recording and listening to the sound straight from the tape while you make all the gain adjustments is incredible. And it would be much better than the USB port. And why aren't other companies making cassette players like this or even better than this? There are two main reasons. The first reason is evident. It's not a promising or lucrative market for brands to invest in to justify complex production lines. I believe that Tascam and Teac only produces this model because it has a high profit margin. And the second reason is that creating cassette players as good as in the past is impossible. And this is due to restrictions on the use of certain materials in the production of electronic equipments in general. Until the 90s, these restrictions were almost non-existent, so manufacturers could, for example, as was customary, use various mechanical components full of lead and not be responsible for any kind of recycling. And it wasn't just lead, other heavy metals were even more toxic to the environment than lead. These were mainly used to improve the quality of the magnetic signal, whether in magnetic heads or in the famous Type 4 cassette tapes called Type Metal. These were full of highly toxic particles and were, therefore, abolished from the market. The Teac W1200 manual doesn't mention it, but you can play Type 4 tapes on it. The Teac W1200 and Tascam 202 MKVII officially only support Type 1 and Type 2 tapes. The type of the tapes inserted on it is detected using the holes in the top of the tape. Basically, it's a type of toggle switch that changes a status internally when there is or not a hole, so the cassette player can apply the correct equalization to play or record the sound of that type of tape material. Type 2 and Type 4 tapes have the same holes at the ends and use the same equalization for playing. However, to record on Type 4 tape, there are more holes in the middle for an additional toggle switch configuration that neither Tascam nor has. Currently, only Type 1 tape composite of iron is produced on a large scale, and the French company RTM, I have one cassette here recording the masters, is perhaps the biggest manufacturer, of course, in the United States. Cassette tapes are also produced, and they are made by the National Audio Company, NEC, which in addition to the iron types Type 1, they produces the high bias Type 2 made with cobalt. In the past, Type 2 was made with chrome, which gave rise to tapes with better frequency response than cobalt. However, chrome tape is considered toxic to the environment, so it's no longer manufactured. Type 2 cobalt tape is said not to pose any risk to the environment as a final product, but its production does because of the gases involved in the manufacturing process. That's why it's more challenging to find Type 2 cassettes for sale nowadays. Oh, and just for the record, the Type 3 cassette tape was developed by combining the qualities of the Type 1 and the Type 2 tapes. However, it arrived on the market together with the Type 4 tape, which already had an even better frequency response. This is why only a small batch of Type 3 tapes reached the market. Well, I needed to make these parentheses about the tapes because the W1200 is useless without them. Now, back to the features of this device and talking more specifically about the controls. When you use the parallel rack function, you can record 2 cassette tapes in parallel with the same content coming in through the line-in input. The dub-start function allows you to copy the tape's content from deck 1 to deck 2, but don't do this to replicate content. It will always be better to record from line-in, which has no added noise. The return to zero function rewinds the tape to the beginning of the tape. There are 2 buttons with the same name because there is one for each deck. The dimmer functions allow you to select the brightness of the display. There are 3 levels, but the button with the most exciting function is repeat. It works like this. With tape playing, you click once to register the beginning and click again to register the end of the section you want to play in a continuous loop. That section needs to be longer than 10 seconds. After 20 times of this loop playing, it will exit automatically. And speaking about time or tempo, there is a pitch control for deck 1 only, with a plus and minus 12% variation. It is attractive for creating crazy effects on the music playing on deck 1 and recording on deck 2, for example. The rec mute function doesn't allow you to record in silence, but rather to add a few seconds of silence before actually starting the recording. Counter reset allows you to reset the counter at any time, either because the tape has a slipped and lost sync, or to do some relative counting of time in seconds. To use the timer function, you need a specific external equipment for stereo synchronization to use both decks. It's a little bit complex. And just before I talk about the most controversial function, for those of you who have never recorded a cassette tape, all you need to do to record a tape is press hack, then play, okay? I say this because in the old cassette players, you always had to press hack and pause before together, otherwise it won't work. It's important to note that speeding up and rewinding a cassette tape can often cause it to break down mechanically. So avoid this as much as possible. Use play and turn it over after you have ejected it, because there is no auto reverse, okay? And finally, the most controversial function, noise reduction. Is this the Dolby-B noise reduction standard? Yes and no. It's a similar filter, but not the same, because Dolby has refused to license this Dolby-B noise reduction since, I don't know, since the 90s. They might legally impute if someone uses exactly the same filter. But this function is only for playing content recorded with a Dolby-B filter in the past. So to use the old cassette tapes that you probably have in your collection. So listen to the sound of the Teac W1200 now.
I don't think so. No, 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 no. I don't think so. No, 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 no. It's never, ever, 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 ever gonna happen. I don't think so. No, 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 no. I don't think so. No, 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 no. It's never, ever, 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 ever gonna happen. I don't think so. No, 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 no. Maybe someday you'll have it your way. Maybe someday it'll all work out. Until then, nope, a nope, a nope, a nope, definitely nope, a nope, nope, a nope. Probably never, ever, 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 ever gonna happen. Oh no.
You have heard and noticed that noise reduction eliminates much of the hiss, but also removes much of the detail from the mid and the high frequency range. But that's not the right way to record a cassette tape. You need to transform the music a little before recording. I will show you how to do it correctly with an incredible software specifically for recording cassette tapes. Did you like it?